Welcome to linear inequalities in one variable. In this video, I will be showing how to solve linear inequalities, meaning how to get that x by itself, and then representing your solution using graph or using interval notation. Here's the first example. So this question is asking you to solve and then give your solution as a simplified inequality. So your first goal, and honestly the only goal here, is to get that x by itself, because the simplified inequality means just that: get the x by itself and you're done. To solve an inequality, you do the exact same steps as you do with equations. So here the only thing to move to the right is a plus 3. We will do minus 3 and you get x is greater than 12. That's it. You're done. This is your simplified inequality. Let's look at number 2. So the second example here is 3x is less than 9, and the question is asking you to give a simplified inequality, exactly the same as in number 1, but also it asks you for the graph. So once you have that inequality, we will be drawing a number line and we will be coloring one of the sides of whatever the solution we get. So to solve this for x, meaning to get x by itself, you divide both sides by 3 because that 3 is attached to x through multiplication. So x is less than 3. This is your simplified inequality. You're done with part 1. Now we have to graph. I'm gonna go ahead and graph the number line. Place the 0 on my number line to separate the positive numbers that come on the right from the negative numbers that come on the left. And I need the 3, this number 3 right here, so it's a positive 3, and here it is. So my x is saying that it's anything that is less than 3. So if it's less than 3, it can be 2, 1, 0, etc. All of these numbers are to the left of the 3, and then the only thing that's left for us to determine is what kind of circle 3 gets. Because x is less than 3 and not less than or equal to 3, it gets an open circle. Let's look at the next example. So for this question, it's asking you to solve, which essentially means give simplified inequality, but it also asks for interval notation. It is not asking for a graph. However, I recommend still doing the graph on paper before giving interval, because it's easier to give an interval if you have graphical representation. So I'm going to get my x by itself by first adding a 10, and then dividing both sides by 4. So my simplified inequality is x is greater than 3. Again, this question is not asking for a graph, but I'm still going to go ahead and graph it, and then based on that graph, we will create our interval. Because x is bigger than 3, that means that includes numbers like 4, 5, 6, etc. So that's why I shaded the right side of the 3, I colored it, and then I gave 3 an open circle because my inequality is greater than and not greater than or equal to. Now the interval. So my interval, which is my blue part of the number line, begins at 3 and it stops all the way on the right here with a positive infinity. Infinities never get brackets, always parentheses. Numbers sometimes get square brackets, only if they have filled circles. Our circle is open, so 3 also gets the parentheses, and this is your interval. This question number 4 is asking you for the interval again. So our first goal is to get the x by itself and then graph and then give the interval based on that graph. So in this example, we have x's that are on either side of the inequality symbol. We have the positive 7x and we have the positive 18x. So we have to combine them together, which means either the 7x will have to travel to the right here through subtracting it, or 18x will need to travel to the left through subtracting it. My strong recommendation is to collect all of your x's on the left side, meaning drag 18x to the left. It will be easier to understand the inequality if your x's are on the left. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to take that 18x and I will subtract it here on the left. I'll bring the rest of the things down. So -6, these two numbers here will make me -11x. Then my inequality symbol, and I don't have 18x on the right anymore. The only thing I have there is this 11. So now I need to get this x here by itself. Additional subtraction gets removed before multiplication, so I will be moving the -6 first through adding it. This gives me -11x is less than or equal to 17. And then finally, I have to remove the -11 by dividing by the -11 on either side. So x on the left, because 11's cancel, the fraction remains a fraction on the right. It is a -17/11. And then this here is the only difference between solving inequalities and equations, is if you happen to divide or multiply both sides of the inequality by a negative number. Remember, we divided here by -11. We divided both sides by -11. So if that's the case, the inequality symbol changes the direction. Here's the rule. This is a very common mistake, so please do make sure that you check if you're dividing or multiplying as the last step was done by a negative number, and if that's the case, change the direction of the inequality. Now, our question asked us for the interval notation. I will go ahead and graph it first, and then we'll create the interval. So our x is said to be greater than -17/11. Sometimes students have a hard time finding that number on the number line. What I need you to do is put 17 divided by 11 in your calculator. You will get approximately 1.5, and it's a -1.5. So I'm just going to put it somewhere close to -1.5, and that is your -17/11. It needs a circle. This circle will be filled because the symbol has the equal to. So I'm going to go ahead and put that filled circle on my -17/11. And then finally, the shading will be to the right because the numbers are all bigger than -17/11. This is the graph, the picture. So now we have to do the interval notation. My blue shading starts at -17/11 and it stops at positive infinity. Infinity will get a parenthesis, always does, never brackets. -17/11 will get a square bracket because the circle was filled. Here's the final problem before we move into word problems. 3x plus 1 all over -5 is greater than 4. I personally like to first remove fractions. I don't like to work on fractions, and removing of fractions is done by multiplying. Here it will be a multiplication by a -5. So I will multiply by -5 on the left side, and I will multiply by a -5 on the right side. Keep in mind the purpose of this. The purpose is not to take the -5 and distribute. Do not do that. The purpose was so that the -5 that you are multiplying, the green one, and the -5 that was already there cancel. And now your inequality is 3x plus 1, no fraction. On the right side, you have your -20 because 4 times -5 is -20. And now I have to flip the direction of the inequality symbol because I multiplied both sides by a negative. Remember the rule right here. If both sides of an inequality are multiplied or divided by a negative. In our case, we multiplied by a negative. So now, simply getting the x by itself, I will first subtract the 1. Divide both sides by +3. Now, this division is not done by a negative number, it's done by a positive number. So we do not need to change the direction of the symbol. It's going to stay pointing to the left. So x is less than -7. This is our simplified inequality. Now let's picture it and then write interval notation. So x is set to be less than -7. So from -7, I will go to the left because the numbers that are less than -7 are to its left. -7 will get an open circle because there is no equal to in our inequality symbol here. It's strictly less than, and that completes the picture. The question did ask for interval notation. So my blue colored portion of the number line begins here and stops here. We always describe our interval from left to right. So on the left it's negative infinity, and that will get the parentheses because it never gets brackets. And then -7, due to the open circle, also gets a circular parentheses. Here is your first word problem that we will use inequalities to solve. We are planning a reception for our daughter. The hall that we are renting charges a $100 cleanup fee. In addition to the cleanup fee, they charge $13 per person for food and drinks. What this means here is that if 2 people show up or if 100 people show up, $100 will be charged no matter what. But this price here will be varying depending on how many people show up to the reception. The budget is $3,950 for all of it. What is the maximum number of guests that can be invited without going over our budget? So since we're asked for the number of guests, we're going to make that our x. And for each guest that shows up, we will be charged $13. That means if one person shows up, we will be charged 13 times 1. If 10 people show up, we will be charged 13 times 10. We don't know how many we will have. We said it's x, so that's 13 times x. Again, in addition to this charge, it's $13 per person. We will have a $100 cleanup fee. We want to stay less than or equal to 3,950. We do not want to be bigger than this number. Solving this, subtract 100 and divide both sides by 13. So I got x to be less than or equal to 296.15, which means we can invite 296 people or less, because if we invite 297 people, we will go over our budget. Here's the second example of a word problem. A salesman receives a base salary of $950 monthly. He also receives a commission of 10% on all sales over $13.50. How much would he have to sell in a month if he needs to have a monthly income of at least $2,900? So we know our total needs to be 29 or more. He is perfectly happy making more, but he needs at least 2,900. Now let's talk about the abundance of information in this problem. So he does get $950 a month even if he does not sell anything. So we know his salary will include $950 no matter what. On top of that, he gets 10%, so it's 0.1. 10% as a decimal is 0.1 on every sale over $13.50. What this here means, all sales over $13.50, is if he sells less than $13.50, he's not going to get any commission. Meaning if he sells $500 worth of stuff or $1,000 worth, he's not getting that extra 10%. He will be getting 10% after he starts selling more than $13.50. In fact, the 10% will only be applied to everything that's above $13.50. For example, if he sold $2,000 worth, then the commission of 10% will be applied to the amount of sales above $13.50. So only to $650. We don't know if he will sell 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. We will make that our X. So 10%, which is this 0.1, is multiplying everything above 1350. He wants to make more or equal to $2,900. Let's go ahead and solve this. I'll distribute first. Now let's combine these two like terms. They are on the same side. We don't need to change any signs. Now I'll move 815 through subtracting it from 2,900. And now I need to divide both sides by 0.1 to finally get my x by itself. This means the salesman needs to sell at least $20,850 in order to make $2,900 or more. Here's the final question of this recording. Jim has received scores of 75 and 76 on his first two 100-point tests. What score must he get on his third test? So whatever we're asked for, what score must he get on his third test? That will be our x, the third test score, in order to keep an average of 77 or greater. Again, he's okay getting 85 or 90, but he wants at least 77. So he wants to be 77 or more. So average, the definition of average is when you add all scores in this case and divide by how many tests you had. So we will have had 3 tests, 75, 76, and x. So we're going to add those numbers, 75 plus 76 plus x. We're going to divide them by 3 to find the average, and we want to be at least 77. Perfectly fine to be greater than 77, but we want to be at least 77. We can go ahead and add 75 and 76. That's 151. And then we will remove the fraction by multiplying both sides by 3. And now to get the x by itself, you subtract 151. So x is greater than or equal to 80. This means that his third test needs to be an 80 or more in order for the average to be a 77 or more.